Hello there, welcome back. Today, I feel like making a brine pork tenderloin, so that's what I'm going to do. None of this is super difficult. You don't need a ton of ingredients, just a couple things and a little know-how and a lot of patience. We're going to need a large saucepan to begin with to make our brine. We'll add all of our ingredients to it, bring it up to a bit of a boil, and then let it come back down to room temperature, and then just toss our pork in it. It's pretty easy. We're going to start with about 8 cups of water, about a cup of dark brown sugar, then we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of molasses. Molasses can make a huge mess, so just be careful when you're using it, because if it gets on things, it's really hard to get off. Next, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of thyme, and then we're going to put in about a 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary. And then I'm going to add about 5 tablespoons of Worcestershire, the what's it here sauce. And then we're going to add about a tablespoon of creamy horseradish. Then I'm going to add about 2 cloves of garlic minced up. And you want to be really careful not to cut yourself. It's easy with little things like this, especially if you have a sharp knife. A little bit of black pepper, and most importantly for the brine, sea salt. And what I'm looking for here is the water to be really salty, close to like ocean salty. And once it's gotten to that point, I'll know it's ready to heat up. Alright, give that a little taste. And now it tastes like I'm going to meet a sea turtle in it, so it's ready to heat up. So now all I need to do is bring this almost up to a boil. So I'm going to set my oven to a medium high, and I'm just going to let it kind of come up to temp. So it's been about 10 or 15 minutes. I've stirred it a couple times to make sure that the sugar on the bottom of the pan doesn't burn, because it'll ruin the flavor. Now that we got it at a bit of a boil, I'm just going to turn the heat down to a medium, or just under a medium, and let it simmer for about 5 or 10 minutes. I can taste the other flavors making their presence known and becoming friends, so I'm going to give it just a little bit longer, and we're ready to go. So it's been about 10 or 15 minutes. I just checked it. The flavors taste good. I don't know if I'm going to get a whole lot more out of it. So I'm going to take it off the heat and let it come down to a nice room temperature. If we add the pork while it's still like this, it's going to start the cooking process, and when you go to put it in the fridge, you're going to get sick. I let this sit out for about a half hour and let the steam reduce, and then I put it in the fridge for about another half hour, 45 minutes. What I want to do now is use a thermometer to make sure that it's around room temperature and it's not too warm. About 88 degrees. Now that I know that it's at a good enough temperature that it's not going to try and cook the pork, I'm going to go ahead and strain it and put it into a vessel that I can brine the pork in. For that, I'm going to need a large mixing bowl of some kind and a fine mesh strainer to try and catch some of the gunk that's in the sauce. I'm just going to very carefully pour the liquid through the strainer and try and catch the little bits of seasoning and garlic and everything else that's in there, so that I have a nice clean brine to work with. I've got my pork loin here. I'm going to put it in the brine and make sure that it's completely covered and let it sit in the fridge for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, give or take. You could leave it overnight. I've never tried it. I'm sure it'd work fine. I can't see that it would hurt anything. But usually about 2 or 3 hours is my my go-to for this brine. And now we just hurry up and wait. I put a little salt and pepper on the pork all around so that when I put it in the pan it's going to get a nice crust. Now all we need to do is get this heated. I'm going to put it on a medium heat. Then I'm going to add about a tablespoon of bacon grease. Our goal here is just to try and get a nice sear on all the sides of the pork that we can, so that when we finish it in the oven, it's got better flavor. Alright, the pan's hot enough now. I'm just going to put my pork tenderloin in it and let it go. It's going to take 3 or 4 minutes aside. I should be able to get about 4 turns on it, 3 or 4 turns, so that the whole thing gets a nice crust. We don't want to fiddle around with it too much because we want a nice crust on the bottom. So just leave it. You can check on the tail a little bit if you really want to make sure it's not burning. Put about 3 or 4 minutes aside. Give it a flip. Get the other sides. Not super hard. Just be patient. Go ahead and give it a flip. Give it another little flip. This brining method is also really good for pork chops. You can brine them the same way you would this tenderloin, cook them in a pan the same way, but the pork chops you don't need to finish in the oven, you just let them rest. Another little flip. And this last edge, you usually have to hold the pork loin upright. Do this top part just a little bit. I've got a little tray set up so I can finish it in my convection oven. I'm going to put it in there at 375 for anywhere from like 5 to 8 minutes depending on the size of the tenderloin. And I'll see you in a minute. My pork took a little longer than I thought it was going to. It was more like 12 minutes or so, but the internal temperature is right about 145, which is perfect. Now all we need to do is let it sit here and ignore it for like 5 or 6 minutes to let all the juices redisperse into the meat. Cut it and serve it. Alright, it's been resting about 5 or 6 minutes, give or take. Let's give it a cut and see how it looks. I'd say that's a job well done. And as I always say, if it's bad for the heart, it's good for the soul. I'll see you in the next one.